What is Mindbug? Yes, welcome to the table. That is the question we're asking ourselves and hopefully answering for not only ourselves but for you. What is Mindbug? Some of you may already know. Mindbug was a game that was on crowdfunding some time ago from Nerd Lab. And it more recently got picked up for distribution, at least in North America, I think, from Ghost Galaxy, the people who are doing Keyforge now. So there's a little bit of heightened interest here. I'd heard about it, but had never played it.
Yeah.
I'd only heard it by name. I know Richard Garfield was involved.
Yep.
So it's got some sort of birthed in what you'd expect from Richard Garfield in terms of game design and philosophy. It's a two-player card battler. Yep. But it does some really interesting things, and I'm gonna post my first answer to the question before we even start the discussion. Okay. My answer?
Yeah.
Chaos in a box.
Oh, was I supposed to come up with a clever response?
No. But now you are. No, you don't have to respond to that. But this is chaos in a box, but not just pure chaos. By that I mean you're not building decks. This is not a deck builder. It does have things that are gonna, in my opinion. Not maybe Ryan's, but in my opinion, it has a lot of things in it that feel like the same buttons that would be pushed by a trading card game or a collectible card game, but it's not one of those things. But it's a two-player card battler where you're playing cards that have different effects. You're attacking with those cards, trying to whittle down the hit points of your opponent. Everyone starts with 3. But you're getting cards out of one central deck. At the beginning of the game, you take the deck of cards, and I think in the base game, First Contact, there was like 40-some cards. Shuffle them up. Each player gets 10. Shuffle those up. That's your personal draw pile. You take 5 of those. That's your starting hand. So you're finding out what cards you have right then and there, which is a big difference from many games that you'd get to play like this.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, you mentioned like, okay, well, it maybe kind of feels like a CCG, but not. It maybe kind of feels like a card battler, but not. It maybe kind of feels like a deck builder, but not. There's so many things that this kind of feels like, but not, that it actually kind of like, it's taken its own identity. It has its own space that, for me at least, makes it very difficult to really categorize, because it is so unique. I mean, if you're a CCG fan, if you like to play games like Magic or like Pokemon or Flesh and Blood or Lorcana, the most recent one, you're definitely going to recognize, what these cards are doing. But it really does, it takes away so much of the game. Like David said, just 10 random cards, almost like opening a Keyforge deck, which is also Richard Garfield. But every time you play, you're getting a different set of 10 cards. You're getting a deck that may or may not work well together. And there's an element of luck there, but not really. And you might think, okay, well, you might get the 10 best cards in the game. But we haven't even really talked about what makes this game so interesting and so unique, because you're not necessarily playing the cards in your deck. You're not necessarily playing the cards in your hand because of these Mindbug cards. And this, to me, is what makes this game so interesting and so elevated, is that when your opponents play cards, like in a normal CCG, they play a card, it goes out, or even in a normal card battler, sometimes you have to pay a cost or whatever, and there's a resource. None of that. You just play cards, but your opponent can steal your cards with these Mindbugs. Twice per game.
Yeah, each player has 2 Mindbug cards, and as long as you have one, you could just say, I'm going to Mindbug that. Yeah. So you really have to, this injects a massive amount of head games.
It's so simple. This is so simple.
It is. And brilliant.
But right. Like, just having these on the board changes everything. I mean, everything. Because you're looking at your hand and you're like, oh, I have a great hand, knowing that probably 2 of those cards are going to end up being controlled by your opponent.
Yeah, well, you've got to remember, in fact, we just played it too, and I myself kind of forgot that, because you can get so caught up in looking at your cards, you're like,
that's a killer card.
That's the perfect card for me right now.
It's a game ender.
And you play that perfect card for you right now, and then you realize, they're going to recognize that it's the perfect card for me, and they're going to Mindbug it. And then it became a really good card for them and like complete. So there's a lot of chaotic things happening at the table. Now, some of you might think, well, I don't like chaos and luck. It's not just chaos and luck. It is like what Ryan said.
There's a lot that goes into that strategy.
The best way to describe what's happening here is you get what you get.
Yeah.
And don't throw a fit also. But also,
get what you get. Don't throw a fit.
And do with it the best you can.
Oh, that doesn't rhyme though. I thought you were going to get 3 rhymes there.
That's why I'm not a poet. But no, you do with it the best you can. It's a very tactical game, and it's very, very short. So where I would say a lot of that, some of that chaos that you feel in the game might not be terribly palatable if it were a longer game.
Yeah.
This game is super fast. Like I said, your deck is 10 cards.
Yeah, and right, it's 10 cards, and you're not worrying about like a lot of these kind of games, like any kind of card battle. You're not worrying about resources. You play a card, it has a number, and the value of the card is its power, and you're trying to do damage to your opponent. The number doesn't matter. Every card just does 1 damage if it gets through, but it matters when your opponent starts blocking. And so you have this whole tension of like, I have some cards with really high values, and maybe they have really good powers, and like, maybe the powers aren't as good, but my opponent might want just the value. So it's very difficult to like look at your hand and think, okay, well, I've got a plan here. You know, in most games, you look at your hand and you say, okay, well, if I play this card, it combos really well with this card, and I can kind of use these abilities and win. But that's not going to happen, because if your opponent can recognize that, then you've just lost that second card.
Right.
So you have to find ways to be really sneaky. And of course, these cards, like, you know, Richard Garfield is a CCG designer. He designed Magic: The Gathering, right?
Speaking of sneaky.
Right. So all of these different cards have so many different abilities. They have statuses. They have, you know, effects that come in when they play, when they attack, when they die. All of that gets factored into the decision of which card to play. But also, like, you know, you might play a card that's really, really, really good for your opponent.
Yeah.
Just to kind of lure out the Mindbug. But man, I can't even like, it's so interesting.
Yeah, it's a very, very interesting game. I can't imagine, I have not yet played it with anyone who did not like it. Played it with Ryan, I've played it with Emily, I've played it with Alicia, I've played it with my son, Ben, who, when I play any games with my sons, they're like very reluctant at first. And this was like at 2 a.m. one night. I drug him off his computer. We played it, and he was very skeptical at first. But then as soon as he started seeing how some of the cards could work together and how he could kind of play those mind bugs and how he could anticipate me playing my mind bugs, it really got the gears turning. And everyone, like I said, has had a lot of fun with this.
I mean, there's a ton. I mean, the mind games are next level with that, with the like. And sometimes it's like you really just need to give your opponent something good because you're like, please mind bug this because I've got the killer card in my hand and I really want you to, like, if your opponent even has 1 mind bug, you second guess every single play. Yeah. And that is not something you normally have, even in Keyforge. Even in Magic, you're not second and third, fourth guessing.
No, the
every move
the game evolves over time because at first, when you both have the mind bugs, it's very tense like that. And then once you get someone to spend both their mind bugs, and I've played a couple different ways. One time I was like, you know what? I'm going to use my mind bugs right away. I'm going to take their first 2 cards. And I don't know that that's the winning strategy.
It definitely sets you up early, but
it sets you up early, but you have to remember, once you have no mind bugs, it very much changes for the other player because they have the luxury of not caring at all about what they're playing.
Well, that's the thing too, that same second guessing that you get when you're playing a card, you get when you're using your mind bugs. You're like, this feels like a really good mind bug opportunity for me, but like the first one's a little easier. Then that second one is like, is this where I want to use it?
Right.
Because if you mind bug, you're effectively taking the player's card and that turn. You're passing your turn and it goes back to the opponent. So they might play something just to lure out your mind bug and you're feeling pretty good until you see the second card they play, and then you go, yeah, well, now I've lost. I should have waited.
And the cards, like, in addition to the powers, and we'll talk about a few of them, because, like, when I said chaos in the box, I mean it. There are some cards here that we actually had to look at and go, this can't be right?
Right.
But also, you never know what cards are going to be strong and what cards aren't. You could have a card that has a power of 1, but sneaky.
Right.
And the sneaky cards can't be blocked by anything unless they're sneaky. So if your opponent doesn't have sneaky out, you can sit there and whittle their points down very quickly. And like I said, you start with just 3 life. So that can go very quickly. And it's cool about these counters, they go up beyond 3. There are crazy cards I had a card that said reset your life points to your opponent's life points.
Oh, nice.
So effectively, if I could get that played, again though, the Mindbug is an interesting thing here. If I were down to 1 and Ryan was still at 3,
that doesn't really benefit me.
He wouldn't want to Mindbug it because he's just going to bring himself down to 1. So it's kind of
maybe I want us to both be at 1. Maybe I'd rather us both be at 1 than you be back to 3.
That's possible.
That could be one of the decisions you make. So, yeah, and these card effects, I mean, they're wild. You're discarding cards. Like, you only get 10 cards. There's some that discard your whole hand. There's some that let you draw all of your discarded cards back into your hand.
Yeah, there is one that literally lets you do that. Your entire discard pile back into your hand, meaning that you have, and there's no hand limit. You just can't draw back up to your hand limit at the end of the round or whenever you draw. Right. That's another interesting thing here is there's no sort of phase where you draw back up. When you play a card, you immediately draw. In fact, you're supposed to draw a card to refill back up to 5 before you even resolve the card that was just played. Because it might affect
the card that you drew in your hand. Yeah. So it's very difficult to quantify this game. I'd say you need, if you're a fan of card games at all, not just like, it's missing a lot of the trappings that make a CCG.
Yeah.
But I think you had even said before that like Richard Garfield's design ethos was to like boil it down.
I think that, and it wasn't just him and the design team wanted to take a lot of what they enjoy and love from their TCG and CCG design philosophy and bring it to something quick, fast, chaotic, and most of all, and in my opinion, fun. Like, that's what this game is to me. It is just fun. Like I said, there may be games that you play where you're like, oh, well, I never had a chance.
Sure.
Because of the way, but you just spent like 10 minutes,
right.
15 minutes maybe, so just reset and do it again. And it's really fun if you can enjoy seeing some of the craziness, even when like someone plays a crazy card against you and you're like, oh man, that is insane.
I really should have Mindbugged.
Exactly. Or I shouldn't have spent my Mindbugs.
You're right.
You can get around that and just find the fun there. This game is just a blast at the table.
And let's talk about expansions. I mean, we're not here to.
There are some.
There are some, but this game is also just ripe for an endless amount of I mean, they can introduce new card types. They can introduce new special abilities.
And they have. There's a couple. So we played with First Contact, and we also got a copy of, I think, Beyond Evolution. Now, in the game we just played, and we haven't played with Beyond Evolution too much, but one of the big things that it adds is there are some evolution cards in there where you have cards in the main deck, and if you happen to play one, or Mindbug and play one, it has the term action on it. So it adds a new thing on your turn you can just use as your action. You can activate that card, and a lot of those cards then evolve. So there's a card in the deck that evolves to this, and then it evolves from this to this. So you can really kind of power up characters and stuff like that, which is very cool. And that's just one thing in one of the expansions.
Yeah, and this game is just, like David said, it is just a lot of fun. Win or lose, it's a lot of fun. And like sometimes, there was a moment where I thought I was about, like literally could have lost at any second.
Yo, you thought you were dead.
Well, I thought I was dead, but
then I lost.
I got lucky. Because I got lucky with the sneaky, because you had the sneaky, and you got to have sneaky to block the sneaky, and that was
say sneaky again.
Sneaky. But that's a cool element to the game that like you could be in a bind and then draw a card and like, oh, I really hope they don't notice, or like I really hope they're out of Mindbug. So I definitely recommend this game. I mean, for sure, it's not expensive.
No, it was really inexpensive. I think. I want to say they even had a new package at Gen Con. I think the Ghost Galaxy edition, effectively, if you will, is probably going to be available. And because Ghost Galaxy picked it up, it wouldn't surprise me if that means they plan to support it.
I guarantee. I mean, look what they've done. They're bringing back Keyforge. They're supporting Keyforge into the future. I imagine we're going to see, a few expansions a year, maybe even. For
and I don't often say this about a game, but even like Ryan was about to say, if you're a fan of card games, I would say, even if you're not traditionally a fan of card games, give this thing a try. Yeah. This is one of those games that I've come very close to suggesting anyone would probably be happy with this in their collection.
And if you're not, you've lost 10, 15 minutes of your time.
Exactly, and maybe some dollars.
Yeah, right.
But anyway, that is Mindbug. If you have any questions at all, we might get this played on a live stream or something, or do something
several times on a live stream
here on the channel. But if you have any questions right now, make them in the comments below. We'll get down there and answer what we can. Maybe talk about our favorite cards. If you've played Mindbug, let us know in the comments below if you have a wild favorite card.
Yeah, or some
that
of those combinations that if you can get these two cards out that work so well, like it's a lot of fun to find those.
Yeah, but until next time, make sure everyone has fun at the table, and we'll see you then.